Sutton shares her thoughts on Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky's separation. Sutton Stracke hasn't shied away from discussing Kyle Richards' separation from Mauricio Umansky, offering her perspective on the situation during The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Season 14. Drawing on her own past experiences, Sutton expressed concern for her friend and shared what she believes might be the best course of action. Speaking during The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills after show, Sutton reflected on her past relationship and how it shaped her view of Kyle's separation. "I've been through something similar," she said, "so I just want to share my perspective with a friend who seems to be in a very complex situation. I think it's important to take action on your own terms." Kyle, who has been living separately from Mauricio since 2023, responded with her own take. "That's a valid point, but I have to follow my own path," she said on the after show. "It didn't feel like the right time for me. I'll know when it is." Sutton also mentioned seeing photos of Mauricio with other people and wondered if he had moved on. Still, Kyle emphasized that the only people who truly understand the relationship are those involved. "People may be looking from the outside, but I still have trust in him," she explained. "I know others may be speaking from their own past experiences, but this is my life." Despite their differences throughout Season 14, Kyle and Sutton seem to be on good terms today. "Sutton and I are in a good place," Kyle shared during an April 8 Bravo stream. "I had some disappointments, but we've moved forward." Sutton echoed this during an interview on April 23. "Kyle's been really busy. I haven't seen her since the reunion, but we've both had a lot going on. I'll probably catch up with her once I'm back in LA," she said. Sutton Stracke's reflections on Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky's separation. The Los Angeles air felt heavier than usual that evening, a smoggy spring dusk folding itself into the hills like a silk scarf hiding a bruise. Sutton Stracke sat alone in her Bel Air garden, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand and a fur throw draped over her shoulders, even though it wasn't particularly cold. Maybe she just needed the weight. She stared out at the hedges trimmed to perfection, each one a tiny monument to order, control, and curated beauty. The birds had quieted. A car rolled by below, its tires whispering against the pavement. The world kept turning, but something in her life, and Kyle's, had shifted. "I've been through something similar," she'd said, her voice uncharacteristically soft during the taping of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills after show. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't staged. It was Sutton, not the quirky Southerner in Gucci, but the woman who had once quietly unraveled behind heavy doors, while the world assumed she had it all. The first time she truly noticed something was wrong with Kyle was not on camera. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon during a shopping trip in West Hollywood. They were trying on handbags, something usually lighthearted, even frivolous. But Kyle kept staring at herself in the boutique mirror, her expression vacant. "You all right?" Sutton had asked, her voice laced with something between concern and caution. Kyle didn't answer at first, then, "Just tired." But Sutton knew tired. Tired was the word women used when they couldn't yet say heartbroken or confused or numb. That same evening, Sutton went home and sat in her reading room, staring at the photo of her ex-husband tucked in the back of a drawer. The past felt oddly present. Memories, painful and beautiful, returned with the smell of jasmine drifting through her open window. "Taking action on your own terms is important," she told the cameras, and she believed it. Still, she understood the paralysis that could come with love that had twisted itself into something unrecognizable. The Bravo reunion was intense. There had been tears, some real, some for the show, but Sutton could always tell the difference. She had built her life on decorum and discretion, but the show demanded vulnerability, sometimes to the point of bleeding. When the conversation turned to Kyle and Mauricio's separation, Sutton felt her pulse quicken. Cameras or not, this was real life, real heartbreak, real transitions. She wanted to hold Kyle's hand across the velvet-covered sofa, But she knew that wasn't how their friendship worked. Not always. Seeing the photos of Mauricio with other women, Sutton admitted, it hit a nerve. I thought, has he moved on? And what does that mean for Kyle? The truth was, Sutton wasn't judging. She was remembering. Back in 2016, Sutton had discovered the emotional distance in her own marriage, not through an affair or a dramatic confession, but through silence. Long silences, empty rooms, business trips that lasted longer than they should, and finally, a bank account that whispered secrets behind her back. She hadn't told many people, but she'd spent weeks pretending. Pretending for the children, pretending for society, pretending because the alternative, truth, was terrifying. So when Kyle said, I have to follow my own path, Sutton respected that. Deeply. But it didn't stop her from worrying. She knew that when you share a life, a home, and decades of memories with someone, detangling becomes its own quiet war. Sometimes the softest endings could leave the deepest scars. They met in early March, just the two of them, at Alfred Coffee on Melrose. No cameras, no producers. Just two women trying to understand each other through lats and oversized sunglasses. Kyle looked radiant, but Sutton saw past the concealer. Do you ever miss him? Sutton asked, careful not to define who him was. Kyle stirred her coffee. I miss who we were, she said, but I don't miss feeling small. It was a rare admission. Sutton felt something catch in her throat. That's what I didn't even realize, she said quietly. How small I had made myself to keep everything perfect. She paused, sipping. Perfection is a liar. They sat in silence after that, the kind that isn't awkward but reverent. The tabloids were ruthless. One headline screamed, Mauricio moves on, spotted in Cabo with mystery brunette. Another countered, Kyle still wearing her wedding ring. What does it mean? Sutton read them all. She hated herself for it, but she needed to know what her friend was facing. People look from the outside, Kyle had said on the after show, but only we know the truth. And Sutton agreed. She'd lived that. The days after her separation, the gossip mill in Augusta had buzzed like cicadas in July. She remembered feeling both invisible and scrutinized, as though she were under a microscope held by ghosts. Season 14 was different. There was tension in the air, some of it performative, some of it deeply personal. The fights seemed pettier, the friendships more fragile. But Sutton held firm, even when Kyle snapped at her or when words went unsaid. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a friend, Sutton told the producers, is let them come to you when they're ready. She wasn't going to push Kyle. She wasn't going to pry. She'd made that mistake once, early on in their friendship, and it had cost them months of cold shoulders. So instead, she extended small kindnesses. A bouquet of peonies on Kyle's birthday. A handwritten note slipped into her dressing room. Nothing showy. Just reminders that someone saw her, not the headlines. By April, the public drama had quieted, but Sutton knew better than to assume calm meant peace. Kyle's been really busy, she told a reporter. We haven't seen each other since the reunion, but I'm sure we'll catch up. Privately, she missed her. Not just for the show, not just for the clinking glasses and dinner parties, but for the way Kyle used to laugh, really laugh, with her. She wondered if that laugh had left Kyle's life along with Mauricio's presence. Sutton sat down with her therapist in late April, after a particularly emotional day of filming. She brought it up, of course. She reminds me of me, Sutton said. The way she defends him. The way she says, it's not time yet. I said all those things too. The therapist nodded. But you came out the other side. I did, eventually, but I lost years. Would you do anything differently? Sutton looked down at her rings. She still wore them on some days. I would have left sooner. I would have trusted myself. There's a language women speak that men rarely hear. It's in the way they hug slightly longer than necessary. It's in the texts that say, thinking of you without a reason. It's in the shared glances when a friend's smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. Sutton and Kyle were speaking that language now. They weren't in constant contact. There were no dramatic reconciliations or Instagram proclamations of sisterhood. But Sutton knew Kyle was still figuring it out, and Sutton would be there, quietly, perhaps awkwardly, but fiercely when the time came. One night, Sutton found herself back in her closet, flipping through designer gowns she hadn't worn in years. She paused on the navy one, the one she wore to the gala right after her divorce was finalized. She remembered standing by herself near the open bar, her smile too bright, her heels too high. And she remembered Kyle arriving late, hugging her like they'd known each other forever, even though it had only been a few seasons. "You're gonna be just fine," Kyle had whispered, lipstick brushing Sutton's cheek. Now, Sutton hoped to return those words. "You're gonna be just fine, Kyle," she whispered into the night. "And when you're not, I'll be here." Beverly Hills glittered in the distance, but Sutton no longer needed the shimmer. She knew where she stood. She knew who she was. And she knew that sometimes being a good friend didn't mean giving advice. It meant sitting beside someone until they were ready to stand.